Shalom Kavrim, very warm welcome to this evening, and it's a wonderful day. We are well into many of the parshas. We're still in the book of Bereshit, book of Genesis, uh, but we're going to study something very, very nice. Now, in this Parsha Toldot, but before I start this Parsha Toldot, I want to thank God for something very beautiful that's happened, and I want to let me thank God for something very interesting. I want to thank God for Brother Stanley and Shraddha, who's online. Stanley, they were blessed with a baby girl on Monday morning, and I had visited the place for prayer some time ago. When I think it was in Stanley, which month was it? September, October? Oh, which month August. Did we come for the baby? August,
September.
Correct. And so we had prayed for the couple, and they've been blessed with a baby girl. So it's a beautiful time. So I just want to dedicate it to that baby child and to dedicate it to all those who have had their birthdays and anniversaries and whoever it is. I really don't know the list. I don't keep up to date, but dedicated to all of y'all. Great. Toldot is very, very amazing because it's so complex a parsha that we really need to understand what is happening in this parsha. Because it's got to do now, this is the parsha that's got to do with 3 generations of all of Israel. Avram Avinu, Avram Yitzchak, and Avram Yacov, right? All 3 are embedded in this parsha. Now it comes on the heels of last time's parsha, which was Chai Sarai, and we've seen about the life of Sarai, and then we've seen that Rivka comes into the picture, and she's brought in, and she's kept into marries Yitzchak, and she's brought into Sarai's tent, and she comforts Yitzchak, and that's how last parsha ends. But this parsha starts now. If you can open with me to Parashat Toldot, this is chapter 25, starting from verse 19 onwards in your English Bibles or in the Tanakh. Genesis chapter 25. And it says out here, it starts with this. Ve'ele Toldot Yitzchak ben Avraham. Avraham holid et Yitzchak. Ve'yehi Yitzchak ben 40 shana בהקטו את רבקה בת בתואל והאמורי מפדן ארם אחות לבן האמורי לו אישה. And these are the offsprings of Isaac, son of Abraham. Avram Holid, he brought forth Isaac, and Isaac was 40 years old when he took Rivka, daughter of Bethuel, the Aramean from Padan Aram, sister of Laban, the Aramean, as a wife for himself. And then it says, Vayater Yitzchak la Adonai lenocheach ishto ki echra hi vayater lo Adonai. And Isaac entreated, he implored, and he requested the Lord face to face, opposite, face to face for his wife because she was barren. Now I want to give everybody a timeline out here. It's very, very important to understand the timeline. And this is the correct timeline. Sarai was 90 years old when she conceived Isaac, Yitzchak. Avram was 100 years old. Sarai died at the age of 127 years old, as per Chai Sarai, last Torah portion. That makes Isaac 37-year-old man who was taken up by his father Abraham to be given as an offering. Can you imagine taking a 37-year-old man as an offering? He was not a small child. Please make a note of this. And then it says out here that Isaac was 40 years old when he took Rivka. That means from the age of 37, after the incident of the binding of the Akedah Yitzchak, it took 3 years for him to get married to Rivka. So by the time Eliezer at Damascus actually went and came back, and maybe in a year and a half, or maybe 2 years, traveling those days was not so easy. Okay. And he came back, and then she came, and she was 40 years old when he actually brought Rivka into his tent to be his wife. And she was barren. Now, the Torah also goes on to say that it was at the age of 60 years old in the life of Yitzchak that Rivka gets pregnant. Okay. So it took them 20 years to have these children because she was barren, and he implored Vayeter Echra because she was absolutely barren. 20 years to get pregnant. Now this is amazing. Let's look at this timeline. So he was 60 when she conceived, right? Now we know Avram passed away and died at the age of 175. At the age of 175. So Avram was still alive when these two children were born. So from 100 plus 60 years of Isaac makes Avram 160 years. 15 years of his life is left. So the children which are born now, Esav and Yacov, are 15 years old in the Torah portion later on when it talks about verse 21. It says, Vaigadalu ha-narim vayehi Esav ish yadai tzayid ish sadeh vayakov ish tam yashev ohelim. And the lads grew up, and Esav became a man who knows trapping, man of the field, it says. Okay, a man of the field, but Yaakov was a wholesome man. He was a Tamim, he was a Tamim, with an ability to be in tents and to study and to learn and to grow in wisdom and in the ways of God. Isaac loved Esav because his trapping was in his mouth, but Rivka loved Yaakov. Please make a note of these things now. And I want to give all the personalities. I've named today's Shiur as Ke Adret Seir, which I will interpret for you all. It's very interesting because when you look at these two brothers, now on many levels, I've always touched upon who Esav is, who Yaakov is, but today we're going to touch on a very different level. And it's very important to understand this. Anyway, so let's get back to this portion now. We'll come back to this. And Isaac entreated the Lord opposite for his wife, and she gave birth. This happened at the age of 60. The boys were 15 years old when Abraham died. Now, when Abraham died, boys were 15 years old, and this had a tremendous effect on Esav. It's not explicitly written in the Torah, but it's conclusive because even the sages say the same thing. Until 15 years old, both of them were good because Avram was alive, and Avram had a tremendous effect on the children. But when Avram died, Esav went wayward, completely wayward. He knew he could talk to his father and sway his father with words. So Esav is the man of this world. And I always keep saying that this world needs Esav, because without Esav, there will be no business, there will be no marketing, there will be nothing to sell, there will be no innovation, there will be no technology, there will be no progress, there will be no great personalities, there will be no tycoons, there will be nothing. This is all Esav of this world. That's why the Bible says that he was a man of this field, he was a master of this field. He could speak, he could talk, he could convince, he was master of his trade. That's who Esav was. And he would entreat his father and speak beautiful to his father. He would talk to his father in ways of Torah. Father, he said, tell me about the Torah, tell me about this, tell me about that. But Esav was anything compared to Tam or Tamim. He was completely different. So from the outside, he may have looked very acceptable to his father, but from inside, he was a very, very different person. Okay. Yaakov is not like this. Yaakov, it says, see what it says out here. Yaakov was a wholesome. It says, Ve Yaakov ish tam. He was a man who was without blemish. Tam is basically perfect without blemish. No one can point a finger at you. That's the meaning of tam. Not spiritually perfect or this thing, but justified. Somebody who you can turn and say, Are what a great person. I cannot find a fault in this person. He's like awesome. Tam, without blemish. Tam Yashev Ohelim. And he dwelt. Yashav, he dwelt in tents. That means he understood what it means to always be under covering. Our man said, The world is mine. I don't need anybody's covering. I'm out into this world. But let's jump a little before this and see when they are born, what's exactly happening. So Rivka now, the Lord allowed himself, and the beauty of it, it says that the Lord allowed himself to be entreated by him. He entertained Isaac's Vayeter. This word Vayeter is tremendous. You know, I want you all to go and do a small homework when I finish the Shiur today. Now we'll open the book of Judges and you all will read chapter 13 of the book of Judges. In fact, the entire story of Shimshon, the story of Samson. And I want you all to do something for yourselves, not for me. Okay. I want you all to look at the story of Samson and look at this Torah portion of what we're talking about, because the same words are used also for the story of Samson. So please do that. And when you do it, give me a call. We'll discuss on a personal level. It's really fabulous. Okay. So, and the Lord allowed himself to be entreated by him. And his wife Rivka conceived. And now it says, why yid ratzatsu habanim bechor ba vayitomer imchen lama ze anoki vayiteled lidrosh et Adonai. And the children, it says vayiritzatsu. The word vayiritzatsu, they were literally crushing each other in the womb. They were fighting for survival in the womb. Now, normally, when you have twins or triplets, it becomes very, very difficult for the mother, and the mother does go through a lot of agony. But this was very different, because now the Torah is talking about a very different level of Vayirisatsu. The word Vayirisatsu comes from the word Rats. Resh Sadeh. Rats means to run. The word Rats is run. It's also the same word in Hebrew that's got to do with Ratson. Ratson is will, the will of a person. Rats, Ratson. So will of a person is because a person's constantly running in life. I'm running And as long as I'm running, or I'm strolling, or I'm walking, or I'm ambling around at my own pace, the world is going further and I'm not bothered, or I want to run because I'm ambitious. It all stems from your ratsun, from your will. So the word will and run is the same word in Hebrew. And it says that here, Vait Ratsetsu, these two children were literally speeding and running in the womb. Very interesting. What does this mean? Because each of them were running in their own direction in one place. What was Esav doing? Esav was running towards, I want to get out and I want to rule the world. I have no concern about God, I have no concern about things about spirituality. I, me, mine. That's who Esav is. Well, Yaakov wants to run himself, but he wants to do the things of God. He's got a different running all to do. It reminds me of Rav Shaul. Paul says in the New Testament, he says, I've run a good race. What Rav Shaul says, your guys have to be trained to understand the Pharisee in Rav Shaul. Otherwise, you will not understand the man at all. He says, I've run a good race. I've kept the faith. He says, not that I've achieved what I wanted to achieve, but he says, I've run a good race. That's what he means. Which means right from the womb, Esav is running in a direction of conquering this world. Yaakov is running in a direction of rectifying the world. The split in humanity is so tremendous because until then, until Abraham, the entire world was in spiritual darkness. Abraham came in and he split the darkness. He started splitting the darkness. His rectification also happened because now Sarai was barren. But the barrenness of Sarai was not because of her problem. The barrenness of Sarai was because of Abraham's problem. Let me explain this to you. God withheld the womb of Sarai until Abraham had to remove the strength of his impurities through Hagar, Ishmael, and Ishmael was born. So the entire firstborn strength of the impurities of Abraham came out in Ishmael. And until that came out in Ishmael, then God opened the womb of Sarah and says, now you will get a child, and this child will be from the loins of Abraham, but will not have that running of Ishmael. It will have a different type of running, and I will make a covenant with that. Therefore, every firstborn in the Bible has always gone astray. It's always the second born in the Bible that God has said, okay, this is my choice. Because the firstborn is the strength of your impurities, of who you are, because you just, that's it. That's me. The second child, you always say, okay, let's talk, let's understand, let's decide, let's do this. And I just hope you're understanding from a spiritual angle what I'm trying to say. So until Ishmael does not come out into this world and runs his race, then God says, okay, now Avram, you're ready, a lot more rectified from a spiritual point of view to bring in uh, Isaac, and that's how Isaac was born. So he opened Sarai's womb for Isaac only after Ishmael. So we are looking at it in a very different way. The same thing is kind of happening with Rivka, but Rivka is in a different situation. Now, the fight that is outside in this world, okay, is gone into the womb of Rivka. And it is from the womb, from within the womb, it says that he was Tamim from within the womb itself. He never was born and grew up to be Tamim. No, that's not what's happening. From the womb, Yaakov is Tam and Tamim. Whereas Esav is running completely on a different way altogether from with the womb. Therefore, they were fighting in the womb. He wants to go this way, they want to go this way. They were at it. Esau was literally, it says he was kicking Yaakov and wanting, he would have killed Yaakov in the womb. And the reason why Yaakov held Esau's foot to be born was that he was protecting himself from the kicks. He was holding his the thing to say, don't kick me, don't kick me. So that's basically what was happening. Amazing, isn't it? Really amazing. But the reason Yaakov was born is because he held on to the ankle or the feet or the ekev of Esav. And I always say this, Esav represents the world that is non-Jewish, completely non-Jewish. Why? Because that world, okay, is before the Jewish people. The Jewish people were formed later. First there was Esau, then Jacob comes second. So in many ways, the sages of Israel look at Rome and look at Christianity and say, okay, that is Esau. But being the firstborn, the light inside Esau is so great that the exterior looks very, very different, but his interior is like a vessel that's not rectified. He's not able to contain that light. So you have the light of Esau. The light inside Esau is very great. But Yaakov is the vessel, he's Tam. Yaakov understands this. Now, there are many instances later on in the Torah, you see that he goes and he's muddled. He says, no, what do I do? My brother's gone to marry someone from Padan Aram. I will go, and he goes and marries uh, some Canaanite women that cause problems with his mother and father, and they don't like it. Then he leaves them and he goes and marries Nebaoth from the. Then he says, maybe if I go and marry someone from Ishmael, my uncle's thing, I would be accepted. And he goes and he goes and marries the daughter of Ishmael, and he's all mixed up. You see how prophetic it is even in this world today. Ishmael needs the Christian nations to understand him. And the Christian nations need Ishmael for what he can give, for the oil and for whatever relationship they have. The Christian nations have this balancing act of of trying to love the Jewish people, Yaakov. At the same time, their hands are fully employed with Ishmael because he's married to Ishmael. They need them for the oil and they need them for the food and for the gifts and for clothes and for a whole lot of stuff. That relationship between Ishmael and Esav, that's a marriage relationship. Whereas to love Israel, there's always a kind of love and hate. Some do, some don't, some do, some don't. It's a tremendous mix. So we have to conclude in many ways, even the sages say, that Esav and Yaakov are opposite sides of this one type of soul, okay, that represents the people of the book, that is Judaism and Christianity. Whereas Ishmael is outside the covenant, it's a different thing altogether. But Esav marries Ishmael, and we see in this story altogether. Okay, then it says, and the children crushed within her, and she said, why is this happening? I mean, this is not normal. This is really not normal. And she went to inquire of the Lord. Where did she go to inquire of the Lord? She goes to the house of Shem. So Shem is practically, I think, still alive at that point of time. Yeah. She goes and inquires in the house of Shem because Shem, the son of Eber, had a yeshiva, and they were still the house of God in a very, very specific way, uh, which was coming down. So she goes and inquires in the house of Shem. And the Lord said to her, two nations, two types of people are in your womb, two regimes from your sides shall be separated. That means from that one essence, two kind of regimes will be separated. And one shall become strong from the other, and the elder shall serve the younger. And when her term to bear grew full, behold, Hineni, behold, there were twins in the womb. And then it says, Vayotze ha rishon admoni belo ke aderet. Ke aderet Seir Vaikrehu Shimo Esav. Ve'achare ken Yotze Achiv his brother Vayudu Achadzat Bechev Esav Vaikra Shimo Yaakov. The first one came, emerged, red. All of him was like a hairy mantle. Kederet Seir. The word Seir means to be hairy, like a hairy goat. A hairy goat is called Seir. So Esav is also called Edom, which is red, and he's also called Seir, hairy. Okay. Uh, Kederet. The word Keder is a very interesting word because that's what I wanted to talk to you all about today. Kederet is referred to a plumpy stuffed animal. A plumpy stuffed. If you look at the Hebrew dictionary and you look up this word eder, it simply means an animal in purely animalistic nature. Now we're getting to understand who Esav actually is from a terrestrial point of view. It says that he came out fully hairy, kederet, seir, hairy, like resembling animalistic birth. Whereas Akev came out smooth, beautiful, Tamim, completely different. The Torah is talking to us on very different levels out here. And they both grew up in their own ways and they're both running in two different ways altogether. So, what does it mean to be born Kederet, to be born animalistic? You see, at the age of 99, God told Avram to go and get circumcised. So, Avram took this entire household and his 13-year-old son, Ishmael, and got them circumcised. Now, there's a difference between the circumcision of Abraham and the circumcision of Ishmael. It says Avram, yes, he went and he got circumcised in his foreskin. But when it talks about Ishmael, it talks he got circumcised in the foreskin of his flesh, which is not mentioned for Abraham. So we know now Ishmael is operating in a much, much lower level of flesh, unlike Abraham. He got circumcised in his foreskin. But what it specifically for Ishmael, et basar, in the flesh, and it emphasizes with the two-letter word et, which is very, very specific in Hebrew. Et basar, in the foreskin of his flesh. That means that's also very prophetic, that Ishmael must overcome his flesh. Look at the Arab world today. Completely uncircumcised in they can be circumcised when they're 30 years in their flesh, but they're not circumcised. It's so prophetic in the Bible. It's unbelievable. Here it says Esav was not born like a normal child. He was born animalistic with all the complete, full-grown animal nature from within the womb. What does it mean to have an animalistic nature? This is what we need to understand now. See, the Torah is telling us something very, very different. It's telling us now how do we choose who we want to be? Whether we want to pursue being like Yaakov or we want to be pursuing to be like Esav. The world is full of Esav. There's an Esav inside all of us because we want to progress. We want this. We want to do that. We need technology. We need to update ourselves. We need to reskill. We need to do things. We need to. If there is no Esav, this world is not going to run. That's it. Very simple. So, can you do without Esav? You can't do without Esav. So, what does Esav need to do? Esav needs to take that khidare, that animal there, and bring it into perfection. This is the whole understanding of what the Bible is trying to tell you. What is our role in this world? So the Bible is saying now every human being is born with two levels of soul. One is the divine soul that is aspiring to be better than yourself. That I want to be better than who I am. I want always want to improve. I'm looking up. I want to arise. I want to do aliyah. I want to reach God. I want to know who God is. That's the quest of every human being. That's the divine breath, the neshama, which is called neshama. Then there is the nefesh, the physicality, the blood that's pumping in your body with adrenaline. That's the nefesh. That's the terrestrial soul that eats, sleeps, procreates, does everything like an animal. Because the animal side of you is still an animal. You've been given a neshama only that the neshama is able or allowed to exert pressure on the nefesh and wake him up and say, get up, you got to be better than this. And you given to that good inclination, say, yes, I want to overcome this. So once the animal inside of you wants to overcome and comes into the process of rectification, that's when your journey starts. Now, we who come into the faith through Yeshua, we've been given, okay, you come in, you say the sinner's prayer, you accept Jesus. What does it mean to say, oh, you accept Jesus into your life and you start living this godly life because you are doing it? Are you allowing the rectification to start? That's the most important thing. Are you allowing the divine neshama to tell you, don't do this, self sacrifice, start rectifying, curtail this, entertain this, stop this, start that? That is rectification. There is a tremendous amount of reflection that's needed in every human being, a tremendous amount of understanding and self knowing. Who am I? What am I doing? How do I process out my life? Ramkhal says a very important book in his great work, Mesudut Yasharim. He says it is the duty of man to know what his role is in his world, not in the world. Until I don't know what the role of my life is, of who I am in my world, I'm lost. I cannot go around changing the world until I don't know what my role is first. How do I know what my role is first? Is I have to intelligently, with Sahel, understand who I am. I have to have a deep sense of knowing who I am. And once I know that, then I use techniques and concepts in the Bible, which we do in our courses, which I don't think many are familiar with, so I cannot really tell you all about all these things. That you have to use all this, you have to be intellectually involved in everything that you're doing to a very high level. That's why you need to read, you need to study, you need to grow, you need to become a better portion of yourself, you need to improve, you need to be better than yesterday. That is taking Esav and bringing Esav into perfection like Yaakov. This split happened in the womb. For us now, we have to understand that we are totally Esav and now we are trying to be like Yaakov. What is the rectification happening? That's a different matter altogether. So this animalistic nature, Dereth, Seir, it's telling us that Esau was born like this hairy bear, literally like a bear. And they were saying, oh my God, what is this? And he was red and he was hairy all over and he was already a mature child. That's how he was born. Now comes the part of understanding that how do I take this animal me and put it on that altar in self sacrifice? Because until Esav is not able to rectify himself, he's in trouble. He's really in trouble because he has more light than Akev, than Yaakov. Yaakov is naturally tame and naturally Tamim. But being the firstborn, Esav has the power to change. Yaakov is the vessel. He is the vessel. He knows how to keep his vessel pure. Esav does not know how to keep the vessel pure. He's got this tremendous amount of power with an impure vessel. And he's juggling around. He doesn't know what to do with this power. That is why you will see, allegorically, you will see, you know, uh, Christianity walking in tremendous power of God's Holy Spirit and doing many things. But on a personal, on a physical, on a vessel level, the light is not being able to rest because the vessel is not ready. The vessel is not ready. Now, many of the Jewish people also have suffered because the vessels were not ready. But the covenants, the promises, the Torah, the commandments, the process, everything was given to them to keep those vessels ready. That promise and that infilling would come. Esav is getting the infilling, but the infilling is coming and going, coming, going, with, around, whenever required, is there. But that complete resting, you've not entered into your rest, is not happening to Esav because the vessel is not ready. Because he's in this world and he's married to Ishmael. How is he in this world? He's a man of the field. He's a master of everything. He's a master of everything. Once Esav is able to rectify himself, the Esav inside of us, then we will be closer and closer and closer to Yaakov. And then Yaakov will look at the rectification side of us and say, aha, Esav now having the light is able to bring that light into perfection. I mean, bring himself into perfection so that light would be able to be and perfect his vessel. Now, Yaakov knows how to keep a vessel, but he's wanting that light. He's wanting that light. It's our duty to give him that light. But to give him that light, we have to understand and learn how to keep a vessel from there. What do you think we're doing, the yeshiva? We talk so big about rectification. We never talk about, and I don't care whether people have been 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, 20 years born again or praise the Lord or whatever they're doing. It doesn't matter. I'll know immediately whether rectification is required, yes or no. And believe me, all of us, every one of us, rectification is very, very important. Extremely important. We've all said that we are born again, but there is no rectification. We're still remaining Esav. We need to progress. Therefore, we need Yaakov to understand the process and to understand how to keep our vessels in purity. Then the light will make us in oneness with everything. So, Kederet Seir, it's telling us that these two brothers, both twins, they both spoke the same, but their mannerisms were different. Their running, Ratsatsu, was completely opposite to each other. But now you'll ask me that Isaac, he still favored Esau, his firstborn. Did Isaac know that Esau was like this? Yes. But then why did he call him to bless him? He said, my son, he says, my soul thirsts for venison and for food from your hand. please go and hunt and bring me venison so that I may eat of your hands and I may bless you. Poor Yaakov, who's naturally Tamim, but the blessing is going to Esav. So what does Yaakov do? He says, man, this is crazy. It's not done. What is this? He says, look at Esav. He's marrying Canaanites. He's doing everything. He's he's desecrating his vessel. He's doing everything. And I am here doing all the right things, and Father is giving him the blessings. Something wrong. So he is motivated now. And for sake of honoring God's name and keeping the vessels intact and for the light and sing, he takes the step of going and impersonating his brother and this thing. Now, it's very interesting. The time when Esav comes and says, my soul is already leaving out of me. Give me something to eat. I'm famished, otherwise I'm going to die. That was a time just after the death of Abraham. I'll give you a secret. And that was when they were 15 years old. And why does he say this? And why is he cooking red lentils stew? Do you know the Jewish custom of when they actually prepare lentils, lentil dish? They prepare lentil dish in a mourner's house. At least this is what it used to be in Orthodox uh, Jewish houses and even in ancient times. Lentil was prepared in a mourner's house. And who were they mourning for? They were mourning for a period of time for Abraham. That's why I said very early on that the day Abraham died, he was 175 years old, because God never kept Abraham to see Esav in full bloom. And until Abraham was here, Esav was in check. The day he went, Esav went completely berserk. Then he went, and Yaakov was very sensitive to all of this. He's seen what was happening. So in many ways, Yaakov was trying to protect. Esav didn't care. He was scared. He says, what's a birthright to me? And what is a birthright? Being the firstborn. The birthright of being the firstborn is that you have to be a Kohen, that you would be the high priest of the house, that you would officiate for God, give the offering, give the sacrifices, be the firstborn, Bechor of the house. And later on, you notice in the book of Exodus, God took away that from the firstborn. Because when God seen all the firstborn are rot, he took it away and he chose the tribe of Levi. And he said, Levi, I pass it on to you now. These are very important things. So Esav goes berserk with the death of Abraham, and they're in a state of mourning, and Yaakov is cooking lentils because it's a morning time. And he comes and then he says, my grandfather's gone. I don't care. I think Esav felt a greater sense of loss than Yaakov. Yaakov learned from Abraham. He learned from Isaac. And he internalized and he was okay. He was very well balanced out. Esav was instinctual. He was compulsive. He was impulsive. He was too emotional. He was, I if you can just picture what I'm trying to get. So when all these things affected him, it really affected him. He went off the derek, and this is what the situation was. Then the full animalistic nature came out. It came into full bloom. That was at the age of 15. The next time this happens, what was the next time? Is when they were 60 years old each, 45 years later, where he comes and steals the blessing for the second time. That was when he's 60 years old. Both of them are 60 years old. So then, after that incident, Esav says, this guy has kind of tricked me twice. And he was crying and he's weeping so badly that he wanted to kill his brother. Because he realized that in his own stupidity and his own weakness, his brothers taking advantage of him. So Rivka calls Yaakov and says, go to Padanaram, go to my brother Laban, stay there till all this cools down, right? And he takes off and he goes. He was 60 years old. He was 60 years old there. He works 21 years to get Rachel till the time he has all those other children, right? And then he was 80 or 82 years old when he comes back. So that's how many years now totally? And then Isaac dies at the age of 180 years old. Isaac overlived his father, who died at the age of 175. And Avram never lived to see Esav. Sometimes I think it's so natural that we children are more connected to our grandparents than our parents. We're more connected. Uh, we know our parents, either my father, either my mother, yeah, okay, fine. But parents and grandparents have a very special meaning in our lives. We draw so much of strength. And when they're no more, sometimes really shatters us. We can either remain in the derech or we can just go off, right? So I think this is exactly what happened to Esav. So in many ways, Esav was so sensitive to humanity and things of this world, but Yaakov was not. Yaakov was very different. He internalized everything, he understood everything, he was able to balance out his emotions, balance out his walk, be more perfect in his ways, more calm emotionally, mentally. He was Tamim, not Esav. He would just let fly. And this is what something that we need to understand, that is a Esav in all of us. And there is a Yaakov in all of us also. But the split in Rivka's womb was so acute that it was a complete split in the womb. Can you imagine what I'm trying to tell you? It was a complete split in that womb. And when they were born, they just went, and their descendants now finally uh, are going through the same kind of situations that these two brothers. So ultimately, these two brothers are from one womb. They're one. The Christians and the Jews are one. But we have to understand and learn and know that if we don't come in this understanding that I need the Jewish people to teach me ritually how to keep a good vessel and share the light that's inside of me. And they want that light. And they need the light of Messiah that's inside of us. We need to understand the vessel that when we come together, we can be one new man. That is the goal of all things, my friends. That's the goal of all things, my friends. When you'll go home today, please open the book of Judges, chapter 13. Read the story of Shimshon, and you'll find many, many parallels of Isaac and Shimshon in that story and in this story. It's really amazing. So that's what I'm leaving all with today, friends. Look and understand. Sometimes when we read the Torah and the Bible, we're just reading it superficially, and we're not really understanding what's happening. But we need to study, and I keep telling everyone, let's study. Let's study more. Yep. That's basically what I wanted to share with all of you today, as from hindsight, that there's a Esav and Yacov in all of us. Take the animal that's inside of you, bring it to perfection. That is the rule. That's the law. That's the first given thing. That's why Rav Shaul says in Romans chapter 12, verse 1, I beseech you, brethren, with the mercies of God, to offer yourself as a korban chai, a living sacrifice, which is your most important duty, without which everything that you do is of no use, because if you're not taming Esav, you're not in the process of rectification. Okay. God bless everyone. I'm going to put the recording off. I'll see you all next week.